Hi, I'm Michael, and my dream is to turn my innovative cat bed design into a successful product. I'm documenting my journey on YouTube, sharing my progress and the lessons I learn along the way. Join me as I work toward making my dream a reality. All right, let's do this. So last night, life threw a curveball. My wife and I had to say goodbye to a very beloved companion of 18 years, Kurt the cat. That was very hard. His health was in decline. We'd been taking measures for a number of months to keep him comfortable, but it got to the point, unfortunately, where that just wasn't going to be possible anymore. So if I'm not quite, my charisma on camera is already only about a 3 on the best of days, but if I'm a 1 or a 2, that's why. All right. So hug your loved ones, and I still hope that you enjoy the video. Thank you. How hard would it be for you to recover if someone stole your tools, or if you were locked out of your work area? Imagine you showed up to produce what you make, create crafts, wood pieces, whatever, and your CNC is gone, your Cricut cutter is gone, your laser cutter is gone. Anything that you need to fulfill the orders that are waiting in your inbox, hopefully. What if you couldn't do that? I recently had a 3D printer failure, and it's the third sort of major failure I've had with this particular printer since I bought it. Now, in fairness, when it was sold to me under the guise of brand new in box, and it wasn't. I was duped. The person actually made it look as though it were still packaged by the manufacturer, opened it, showed it to me. The way he had placed everything in the box, it looked as though it was brand new. But it wasn't. It was not only was it not brand new, but it was broken in several ways. So I had to buy a new print head assembly right away. That was one of the first things, as well as some belts. Right, because in order to repackage it to make it look new again, he didn't even disassemble it properly. He just cut belts just to make it easy for himself. So, yeah, he was a real jerk. But what I'm getting at is, if those tools are things that you need to create your items that you sell, then you have to have a certain degree of reliability, right? Because if you have an order, say you have an Etsy shop like I do, and Etsy's recommended practice is to set up shipping that within 1 to 3 business days, downtime can be a disaster, right? Because in my case with a 3D printer, not all the parts are available overnight. Some of them have to come from China. Now, some of them I can get a 3D print in Canada. Some of them, if I have to, I can order on Amazon overnight. But some of them have to come right from Anycubic. And if that happens, then I'm 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before the part gets to my door. So if I have orders waiting and I don't have stock, and I have to produce the stock so that I can ship the order, it's not an option for me to wait 3 weeks for something to come from China. So given that, I've decided that I'm going to pre-purchase a few of the parts that I know I've gone through already, that I expect I'll probably go through again. That peace of mind is worth a lot to me. Not having that constant little worry about, well, what if my printer breaks down? And the ability to just swap it in, and within maybe an hour, I can get going again. I can get my printer running again, and I'm not falling behind on an order that's waiting to go out. That's really, really valuable to me. So what are the tools that you depend on, and how long can you go without them? And how long does it take to get a replacement? Because if it takes longer to get the replacement than the amount of time you could afford to wait for it, then that becomes a real problem. Now, here's something that, because I'm a former technician. I used to be on the road. I used to do warranty repair for IBM, HP, Compaq at the time, companies like that. Maintenance, and not just maintenance, but specifically scheduled maintenance, is very important. From now on, and I should have known this already, I should have already been doing this, but from now on, whenever I acquire a piece of equipment, I'm going to open the manual or download it if I have to, whatever, and read the manufacturer's recommendations for maintenance. Now, there may not be any. Depends on what you're buying. If you only use hand tools, then maybe it's just a matter of keeping them lubricated, keeping, a coat of wax on them maybe so that they don't ever rust. But if it's electronic or electromechanical, something like in my case a 3D printer, or maybe it's a CNC, or maybe it's a Cricut, there's a good chance that the manufacturer has recommended maintenance practices. And I'm going to become diligent about that, because I know from experience, from personal experience as a former technician, I know that the people who do their maintenance, or this is even true in cars, the people who do their maintenance are the ones that suffer the fewest unexpected breakdowns. That's just a fact. Now, I think we all probably know that, but I think we, as creators who depend on our equipment to produce the things that we sell, we need to be thinking about it, right? We need to be aware that a breakdown can be catastrophic. And if you want to avoid breakdowns, then follow the manufacturer's recommendations for maintenance. Now, if the manufacturer doesn't supply any maintenance recommendations, then there are some general rules, right? Keep it clean. So choose a schedule, put it in your calendar, maybe once a week, maybe it's once every couple of weeks. You just do a look over and you wipe any dust off. If there are moving parts that have grease or oil, maybe you can add a couple of dabs of oil to keep things running smoothly. Listen for any unusual sounds, any squeaking, any creaking, anything that's unusual is a sign that something is obviously not right. And that's the time to look into it. That's the time to set aside an hour or two, maybe in the evening at the end of the day when you're finished production for the day, to figure out why is it making a sound that it didn't make before. Because that's when you can catch it early, get the parts on order that you might need, and then schedule the time in the evening when you're not in production, or whenever it is that suits you well, to swap the parts out, rather than waiting for it to get worse and worse, during which time maybe the quality of the output of that equipment is becoming reduced because it's not calibrated properly anymore, it's not acting as the way it should. And now that's going to cause two things. One, it's going to significantly increase the chance of a breakdown, and that's a catastrophe. And two, it's going to reduce the life of the equipment. If you keep things lubricated the way you're supposed to, if you keep things clean so that they don't heat up and grind and things like that, if you keep things protected, if it's metal tools, and then you have a bit of wax on them to prevent the rust, that's how you know your tools are going to be reliable. That's how you're not going to have to worry about a sudden breakdown that causes a catastrophe that puts a showstopper to your operation. Now, it doesn't guarantee that can't happen. Of course it can, but it significantly reduces. Also, in the process of cleaning, you end up looking at the back of your piece of equipment. Maybe it's your printer. Maybe it's, not even a 3D printer. Maybe it's just an HP printer that you use to print your invoices. When you clean it, you notice things that you otherwise don't notice, right? Because you end up looking at parts of the printer when you reach around to get the dust out of there. You physically actually look at parts of the printer or whatever piece of equipment you're dealing with that you normally don't notice, that you normally don't see. And so that's one of the reasons cleaning is important, is because not only does it actually prolong the life of the equipment, but it helps you notice things early. and catch them before they create more problems, right? Because problems grow, right? Usually, not always, but in a lot of cases, if a component is not acting in calibration, it's not working quite the way it should, then it will get worse, and then it may actually cause other parts to fail as well, right? So catching repairs early is a way to prevent them from being even bigger repairs, right? The manufacturer knows what you should and shouldn't do with the equipment they sell you or that they produce. So follow their directions, okay? Don't go looking for things that you think might help, because you might be wrong. They might not help. They might make things worse. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, is what I'm saying here. Yes, manufacturers do things to coerce you or to sort of make it maybe even necessary for you to buy from them. All right, like, so for example, people will say, oh, don't buy the brand name whatever, just buy a generic replacement, because the brand name, it's the same thing, and it's just the manufacturer saying, oh, you should buy this one because they want you to buy from them. That may be true, but it may not be. I know from personal experience that sometimes the generic replacement is the same and sometimes it's not. And if you buy something that isn't manufacturer recommended, then you might void any warranty that you have, and you might create problems, because I've seen it. I'm thinking of laser printers again. When it came to refurbished toner cartridges, depending on who you bought what company you bought that from, some of them were just as good as original manufactured. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think some of the manufacturers hired those companies to refurbish them for them, and then they resold them as, as original. So if you bought from the right company, you got something that was manufacturer recommended. And so in that particular case, yes, you're paying more when you don't have to, because you could get it from the refurbishing company as well and save a few dollars. But the fact is, you have to know whether it's really what they call an OEM product, right? OEM just meaning a manufacturer might just use a part from another company as part of their product. OEM meaning that part isn't really from, say it's I don't know this, I'm just guessing. Let's say a CNC manufacturer sells you a CNC, but perhaps the spindle is probably not made by the CNC manufacturer, right? But they brand it as their own. So the OEM spindle, meaning the spindle that came from a third party, but becomes officially part of the CNC you bought, right? That's what OEM is when they say OEM. So, so the OEM, if you know for sure you're getting the OEM, then sure, you can save money, and that's a good idea if you don't have a warranty anymore. But if your product is under warranty and you want parts, and you need parts, then you want to go through the manufacturer. You don't want to do things on your own, because the manufacturer, and understandably from their perspective, if you've meddled with it, without their advice, if you've done things to it trying to fix it that they don't authorize, then you have to understand from their perspective, it's not really fair to them that they should have to replace it now because that they should have to fix it now because maybe you've done damage to it that wasn't their fault, right? So always follow the manufacturer's recommendation. They know what's best for your equipment. Yes, they may be selling you parts at premium price. They may be selling you consumables at premium price. But as long as your equipment is under warranty, I recommend that you just pay that extra premium cost because it saves your warranty and it minimizes the chances of failure. If you go to a generic and it turns out that they're not really an OEM supplier, they're not really someone that is a reputable manufacturer that's providing you with quality parts, then you're going to have headaches. You're going to have issues. You might have compatibility issues. You might have early failure issues. And if your Etsy shop or wherever you're selling, Shopify, whatever, if if your ability to produce, to make, to create the things that you create and sell is halted, the last thing you need in the world is a part that shows up and is not reliable. Maybe you put the part in and maybe that should have fixed it, but because you bought from third party, it has a compatibility issue. So now your piece of equipment still doesn't work. Now you're wondering, well, was that not the problem? Or did I get a defective part? Or did I get a part that's not compatible? So the importance of following manufacturer's recommendations is, in my opinion, it's paramount. So let's recap the reasons why maintenance is important. Scheduled maintenance that you put in a calendar. So first, it reduces the likelihood of major breakdowns, right? Showstoppers to your operation. Secondly, it keeps the equipment running smoothly. It keeps it running as it should, right? So you're getting the quality of output from that piece of equipment that you expect and that you deserve for paying for it. And you have that peace of mind of knowing that you've done what you can do to minimize the chance of a sudden unexpected breakdown, right? Again, it still can happen, but it's much less likely if you are doing what the manufacturer recommends you to do to keep it in proper working order. Okay, so because reliability is so important,